This is Redfall. We're here on Xbox Series X. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. So this is the worst Xbox first-party game I have ever played in my long history of covering Xbox titles. It is horrendous. It is poorly put together. It is a mundane exercise in insanity. And it's just ultimately quite boring and really just disappointing, as I had very high hopes for what this game could be when it was first shown as Xbox's big. And here's one more thing at their event. So what are we getting here? Apparently it looks like it's a native 4K resolution or just a full 4K at 30 FPS. There is HDR support. There is Dolby Atmos support. Play the game alone, or I guess try to, or play it in co-op with 4 players. So there is going to be a 60 FPS mode added down the road, and for now you're just kind of stuck with the lower 30 FPS, which the game doesn't even actually properly obtain, since there are numerous performance issues, texture loading problems, crashes, bugs. It functionally doesn't work. Gameplay-wise, it doesn't work. There are numerous issues where actually the highlight of my entire time playing the game was I was like a vampire that got stuck in the air and it couldn't attack me and I couldn't attack it, and I kind of chatted with it. And that's just like a thing that happens numerous times where you're fighting enemies and they will just stop. They won't move, they won't do anything. They stop functioning. And that's like a lot of the game. It's just bugs, problems, issues, weird, random, erratic performance issues alongside completely, I guess you would say, sporadic difficulty spikes. It's really quite maddening. And I'll also mention that this was like the first time that Xbox has like refused to send out a code for me to cover the game ahead of launch, since, you know, Forza Horizon 2 or Sunset Overdrive, whichever one came first. So Bethesda provided me with a code for this one at launch so that I could take a look at it. And it's a mess, and it's a weird situation, and it's really unsettling. But I wanted to note that because I do believe, you know, kind of being like, hey, this is the situation that happened, but then also being like, my issue goes beyond that dynamic, as I really do try to divide, you know, my element of how I'm feeling about certain things and then how a game actually is. You know, I don't want that to impact my thoughts, and I just want to clearly get across that this game is a complete mess, regardless as to whether or not I would have been showing this ahead of launch or not. But it is ultimately very frustrating that this is the situation around this game. So a lot of the game will be sort of, I don't know, dusk, night, and, you know, we're just kind of at a good time of day to kind of show things off, if that makes sense. And that's why I kind of picked this portion. There is New Game Plus, but a really annoying thing is it's a couple open worlds. So you get this one, and then there's another one. So when you leave this area about halfway through the game, you can't come back to it. When you leave the second area, and you, like, you know, you finish the last whatever, you just restart at the beginning of the game. So you don't get a choice, you don't get any sort of thing like that. It just loops. So if you miss something, you miss something. Just keep that in mind when you're going to play it, if you are brave enough to go and play this. Because as I, you know, have noted, I don't believe the frame rate is even, like, the frame rate is the least of the issues for this game in terms of its quality and what it offers. It's a long, boring sort of trek. It is a healthy amount of game time, but just because a game is longer doesn't mean a game is good or playable or fun. And I think, again, ultimately, this is a very disappointing game since I had such high hopes for what this was going to be. It's an open world vampire and cult-like shooting game. And yet it sucks. It's horrible. It's a blight to the Xbox brand. It's brand damaging. I can't believe that it was okayed that this, you know, would release. I think they should have scrapped this. It's weird though, because I like, if you're kind of noticing some of the pop-in and that as we go through the world too, and the lower textures of the environment. Very 360 era-esque in a lot of ways. But like, you know, it's weird because I wanted this to be more than it was. And then just to see the end result being this really disappointing thing where they've got like structurally an interesting world, but it doesn't really functionally work, and they haven't really done anything exciting or interesting with it. And believe it or not, this is a lot of the game. Just walking around. Like, you know, there are missions, but the missions they're largely fetch quests. You know, you go here, you do this thing, and that's, you know, that's it. That's all the game is. And you just do that multiple times, and you'll get to a point where it's like, hey, you gotta kill a boss, but now I need you to go and grab 3 underboss skulls, so you have to go and grind safe houses. And each time this happens, it's going to take you well over an hour to do that. So they give you these long hour and a bit, probably hour and a half long breaks, kind of, you know, because you pick your missions, you go to a degree, you pick the missions and you go through them. But like these are, you know, to progress to a big point in the game, you're forced to sit there and do this really, really grindy, boring, elongated break into a safe house, do one step of whatever same repetitive task they have, and then go kill a boss and the same repetitive type of boss with a different name that they've branded. There's no excitement or intrigue to this game. There's nothing unique or fun about it. And I don't know how you take a game about vampires and you make it boring. It's shocking. They're cool. Vampires are awesome. I've always enjoyed vampires, even some of the more weird takes. And it's just it's so bizarre that this exists as it does. And another big part of the game that really annoys me is just like, see, this is what I was talking about. Another big part of the game that annoys me is how the gameplay difficulty is structured. You die randomly a lot of the time in the game. And, you know, dying in a shooter is like, okay, it happens, whatever, not a big deal. But the game doesn't have any real concept of what a checkpoint is. If you're doing a boss fight, that is actually the only time this game seems to have any sort of checkpoint system. Otherwise, you're back at your safe house, you're back at the fast travel point, and you have to walk. So, like I said, the game is largely fetch quests. So, you know, okay, there's a mission here. Walk 600 meters. You're done that? Come back to base. Here's another mission. Walk 600 meters. And if you walk those 600 meters and you die, you have to re-walk those 600 meters again. And it's just empty and boring in the open world. Just isn't filled with any sort of real life or excitement. Probably because the vampires ate people. Who's to say who's going to keep feeding these vampires? I don't know. It's not my business. And then the difficulty spikes of not only do you die weirdly fast and suddenly in the strangest of ways, the game goes from pew pew, 1 or 2 shots killing guys, and then all of a sudden, you know, they're taking just a ton of damage. Like in this first area, I'm standing here just like really boringly shooting them, and that's, you know, that's gameplay. They largely they stand there and they take it. And you know, just randomly all of a sudden, you know, you've got enemies taking tons of damage, and there's tons of enemies, and they're sprawling in one place. There's no consistency, to the point where I think even on like an easy difficulty, I struggle to see how people would be able to play this by themselves and not just be completely, you know, infuriated by the design of the concept. Like, it seems like this was strictly made for co-op play. And, you know, a game where it's running so poorly in single player, you sit there and you ponder the situations. Like, some of the boss fights, and I'm really not kidding, were running at like 5 FPS. It was barely playable. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily actually call that playable to any degree, but, you know, I got through it, and it was painful. This game was painful to sit there and play. I did not enjoy this experience in the slightest, and it's a terrible situation, because I don't, you know, especially a game like this where it's, you know, it's cool and it's vampires. I don't go into this wanting this game to be bad. You know what I mean? I look forward to this type of thing. You can go back. I've done, you know, numerous streams and stuff, and I talk about how it's an Arkane game. It's, you know, it's the first really true big AAA game that Bethesda has provided for Xbox. They had less platforms to have to work on for this game. There was a whole delay ahead of this game, and we were still stuck with this insanity of an experience that just is really, really terrible. And like I said, I don't think any sort of like frame rate improvements are going to do anything to fix what at its core is just busted beyond belief. And I've got all these abilities for my character, the skill tree, and if you pause, it doesn't actually pause, enemies still attack you. And it seems like all of them are geared towards cooperative play, and they don't really benefit you if you're playing by yourself. So there's no real sense of scaling if you choose not to interact with others. And then we also have to talk about multiplayer. You have to start a multiplayer match with another player in order to start playing. You can't just be like, hey, I'm playing, and then somebody joins. You have to set that up ahead of time. And there's only progression for the host. And then on top of that, there's also, like, it's online no matter what you do. So I'm playing single player. And, you know, while I was doing something, the servers decided to, like, reset, and it's like arcane error. And I got kicked to the main menu. And I had to restart the segment I was doing. It's insanity. So it's like it's an online server, but it isn't. It's mind-numbingly stupid in every single context and concept. It just doesn't make any sense. The whole design of this game is weird. It's like they built a town and then they just tried to shove quickly and lazily different types of like missions and that into it. It's really, really bizarre. And, like, you can't see because it gets too dark sometimes, and you have to manually turn on your flashlight. And it's not like there's really any sort of, like, stealth in this game. Some of the levels seem to be designed around the concept of, hey, you know, you can, like, move through this area in different ways, but there's no point to it, there's no encouragement to it. It just doesn't make any sense at all. And then we can also talk about the actual narrative of this game being completely nonsensical in any sort of real way. You have all these characters that you keep seeing in these horribly done, lazy, like 2D type cutscene moments that pop up throughout the game. And like, you don't know any of the characters. You don't talk to them really. They're just kind of there in the backdrop. They're completely useless. And, you know, I gotta be honest, I tried to pay attention to the story, and it just kind of seemed like it was complete nonsense. Like, it didn't really come across as something interesting. I think they were going for some deeper, you know, level of like, oh, these people are, you know, bad because of this, but it was really just my character kind of being like, oh, this person's horrible. After watching these, like, weird, reflective, sort of, like, echoes, they call them. And it was just kind of like by the, you know, while I was playing it, even a few hours in, I was like, what is going on? It was like 10 hours, and I was like, what is happening in the story? It's complete nonsense, a lot of it. From a narrative standpoint, you don't know any of the characters, you don't care about any of the characters, you don't do anything with any of the characters. There's not really anything you would qualify as like a side mission in this game. And this, seriously, what you're seeing here, this happens all the time. Like, it's just broken. Like, I wish this was like a non-common occurrence. But like, it constantly, you might have noticed a little bit earlier, I was kind of setting it up so I could show it off over there with the vampires, but I died. But this happens all the time, where they just get stuck, and sometimes you can't even kill them. And other times, the health bars above my enemies disappeared, and I have to restart the whole game again to get the health bars to pop up. And it's just like, look at the 2D trees, and it's a complete failure of a game on every metric. And I really, really don't like to feel that way about video games. You know, I may stream them and complain and stuff while I'm playing them, but I really, really genuinely try to find the value of some element of every game I play for somebody out there that might enjoy them. And this is just one I wholeheartedly do not recommend, and I don't think that there's any way that you can fix this. It should have been entirely scrapped or rebooted or retooled. And I just, like, it blows my mind that there were people out there that were like, you know, gave the okay on this. See, there's another one. You get what I'm saying? Like, this happens all the time. It's just like, you know, I guess the game, like, plays, so it would be, oh, where did you go? So I guess you wouldn't necessarily say it's unplayable. Where did they? Where does... Okay. So I guess you can't say it's unplayable, but, like, you know, where you have many moments where the frame rate drops to, like, 5 FPS. Or you have, you know, weird level spikes and weird missions that don't make sense, and the story isn't very good, and the gameplay isn't fun, and it's mundane. And I sat there and I grinded through this, and I should have stopped way sooner than I did. And it's just, like, weird. Like, that's kind of cool, but, like, you see what I'm saying? Is it just, like, it's so weirdly done, and in an ineffective way that doesn't really inspire me to have any interest in this game. And it's just, it's weird. It's one I definitely would not want to really revisit, and it's not one that I would really say dive into. Like, I think if you have, like, a group of pals or something like that, and you pick the different character classes or whatever, you know, maybe there's some level of fun to be had just shooting vampires mindlessly for hours. But if you're not really getting progress, you're not really pushing forward, you're not really getting anything out of it, I also don't really see the point in any of it either. It's just, it's really, really quite weird, and I don't really understand a lot of this experience. Oh, I gotta get out of this stuff, that's gonna kill me. No, I died. The text is actually pretty cool. I like the text where it says you died or level up and stuff. That looks nice. Good UI, maybe. I don't know, it's just like, it's so weird. See, we spawned at the fast travel point. And it's like, you know, it's an okay play space. The second area is a larger play space. But I didn't have the desire to really explore or look at anything. Which is a shame, because the buildings, they look kind of nice. You can go in some of them. It was funny, and I haven't been able to replicate it, but the first few hours of gameplay, whenever I would punch a window and break a window, like glass, the frame rate would drop to like 1, like literally slideshowy, and then it would pick back up really fast. It was really bizarre, but I haven't been able to emulate that. And that's what I'm saying, is it's just like this weird mix of just like some of the most bizarre problems, glitches, bugs, and I just look at this and I'm like, I think even if, you know, the stutters were fixed, the poor performance was fixed, you still got what is ultimately just a boring, bland experience that just isn't very fun or engaging or interesting to play. And it's just a complete waste of time. It's a waste of the talent of the developers. It's a waste of, like, you know, it's brand damaging, honestly. I look at this and I'm like, I can't believe that they were okay releasing this title and showcasing it as a tentpole experience for the platform for this time. And I'm just left really, truly disappointed for something that I think, concept-wise, potential-wise, could have been a really cool game, could have been a really neat big hit, could have been something really fun and exciting to play, and it sucks. it bites hard.